Okay, we're moving into section 2, which continues our discussion on forms. You'll notice that I'm on a different database. This one's called Central Sierra. But again, this has our three branches of a banks and then our different employees. This goes way back when we were dealing with Bob Linkle and we have our 29 employees. Everything's set up. Our relationships are drawn. They've included a couple queries that we'll use a little bit later, but we're going to focus on creating a form from scratch. So if we go to create and we're going to go to our forms, we're going to choose a blank form, which is just a clean slate, and we can set this up however we want. And then we're going to do some pretty cool things with this. But we're going to go to show all tables, and we're going to base this one on employees. There's all of our fields within the employees table. So we're going to start with employee ID. Notice it starts building it, and then first name, and then we're going to add all these. So last name, branch, title, department, start date, and base monthly salary. Okay, so once you get them all in there, we're done with the field list. We can close that. That button's right up here where it says add existing fields if you ever needed to go back. So this is called the control layout that we'll see right here. So you notice we're in layout view, but the control layout is this area that shows our whole area. And we'll get into that a little bit into this chapter, but not a lot. But if I want to move this whole thing, it's like a table, and you select the whole thing from right there. This is also, there's a button under Form Layout Tools, under the Arrange tab, and under Rows and Columns group. There's, if you're inside that, you can choose Select Layout. It does that as well. Okay. And I'm going to move this down and to the right, and notice how it just creates some more space, gets it away from the edge. This deals with how it'll look when we run the form on a sheet by itself, and that interface would give us a little bit more room. So notice the base monthly salary is cut off. So as we go down here, one thing when you're in a control layout, if I want to remake this bigger, it takes the whole column, and I want to make it just big enough to where I can read it. And then like if I go to record 10, you'll notice that record 10 happens to be my longest in the second column, which is Chief Information Officer. So I click on that one, gets me in the second column, and I'm going to resize that one down. And again, just making it big enough to where I can read everything. Okay. All right. Okay, we decrease that. So now let's add a new column. So again, under base monthly salary, let's go down here. This is called a text box. Keep in mind, this is called a label over here. But if I want to add a third column, I'm going to add some rows at the bottom too. I'm going to select the row. That's what we'll start with. And I'm going to insert below. This is under the Arrange group. That creates a new row. And I'm going to do that again. I'm going to create a couple. You'll see why. Then I'm going to go over here and I want to add a column to the right. So I'm going to select the column and I'm going to insert to the right. Okay. So the new column over here, I'm going to try to make it about as wide as the other two. So they're all about equal. Doesn't have to be exact. And you'll see why we're going to create these here in just a minute. Okay, so I'm going to come down here to the bottom row, and I'm going to do some things to set this up. One thing is the height of it. Now, before what we've done is just click and drag, but we can also use our F4 key. Let's see if mine will work. It does. That gives me the property sheet. This is also available. Is it under design? Yes, under property sheet right here as well. And this will let me set some things up over here in terms of this particular cell. I want to change the height right over here to 0.4 inches. So I'm going to come right in here, highlight that, type in 0.4, press enter, and that changes the whole row for me. Okay. And we're done with the property sheet. F4 will also close it, or hitting the X. Okay, now what we're going to do with this, just so you can kind of visualize what's going on, is we're going to create 3 buttons down here that do different tasks for us. Okay, and these are controls, is what they are called. And so what we're going to do is on this first one, and this is really important, it's under our form layout tools under design. I'm going to hit that drop down here. I want you to always make sure where it says use control wizards. Notice how the button looks to be pressed. And that means that when we create these, when a wizard is available, it'll give us a wizard. So you want to make sure that that is turned on because we want to use our control wizards. It should be. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a button, that's this one right here. Okay, so when I click on it, that's what I've selected now. And I'm going to come down. Let's try that again. Okay, make sure I'm in there. And when I get down here, you'll notice that it hovers, it gives me a little plus sign with the button next to it. So when I click this, the wizard should launch. And here are the different categories of what our buttons can do for us within a form. We have our record navigation operations, form operations, and within each one of these, we have the different commands that can be done. So for instance, we could create a button that would print the record or save the record. We have some miscellaneouses that would print a table and so forth. So the first one we're going to do is going to be for a record operation, and it's going to be save the record. And I'm going to choose next. We're going to not have a picture for this, but we're going to put text. And what I want to save this is not save employee record. So I'm going to edit this. I want it to say save employee record. Choose next. And then we don't want to call it command 66. So the textbook really gives some complex names for this. This one is add emp form hyphen save button. So again, you'll notice camel case, no spaces, capitalizing the first letter for the programmers involved with the database, and it is descriptive in nature. But this is a way, if they're printing out like all the objects within a database, they can identify the names and what they are intended to do. When we choose finish, there is our button. And it doesn't work in layout view, but it will here in form view when we test it out just a little bit. So we're going to do a second one, okay? So for the middle one, again, I'm going to choose the button, come down here, start this one. This one's going to be under record operations, and it's going to be for add a new record, which is the top one. Again, we're going to change the text, and this one's going to be add new employee. This is kind of like the caption, right? Choose next. We're not going to call it that particular command. We're going to do add emp form hyphen add button and finish. And we've got one more to do. So we're going to come down here, add the third one. And this one's going to be under record, actually form operations. We're going to have it close the form. And just so you see it, what the picture looks like, we'll do the picture on this one, which is an exit doorway. And we'll give it a name again, add emp form, close button. Again, using camel case with no spaces, spelling correctly, and choose finish. Now, and we'll test these here in just a minute. Now, notice that this form, because we created from scratch, does not have a title. So we need to add that. So also under design, we have a header and footer group and a title. We don't want to call it form 1, but we will call it add new employee. Again, since it's more of a caption, we do the spacing so it's readable. And, you know, I'm going to you know, I should probably save this thing. So that's another thing that we should make sure that we do and save periodically. But they don't even have us save it yet, so we will here in just a minute. So let's save it real quick and call it add new employees. Just that way we don't lose anything. Okay, so another thing that we want to do is you'll notice right now, if I were to switch to form view, you'll notice that I can go to any one of my 29 employees and I can change somebody's salary. I could go into Bob Lingle, who's our chief executive officer, and make him get paid $1,500 instead of $15,000. So we don't want to give those kind of rights to our employees. This form is actually just designed when a new employee comes in. We just want a blank form and be able to pop their information in. We don't want to have access to all 29 of our employees. So what we're going to do is called restricting the form to data entry. So if I go back to my property sheet, which is my F4 key again, again, we're having problems with that. So, I gotta be in layout view. Let's go there. There we go. Okay, there's my property sheet. So we got all these different options up here, and this would be like to change the size of this one, but we do have the ability to come here into our data. And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna click outside of my individual ones to get to my form property sheet. And we have some different options here in terms of things that we can do on this. Okay, and it's, you know, there's some important things on this particular one. Let me make sure I've got in the right spot here. Okay, and I want to choose form. Oh, okay, see I'm on detail right here. So I want to change to where I'm just making something related to the form. And that's a lot of different ones, but we're only going to learn one on this one. And it's under the data tab. And we want, right now we're allowed to do anything that we want. So we want to turn this into a data entry type of form. Notice how it disappears that. And then we can close that property sheet. Okay. So now we're almost ready to try this form out. And I've saved it, which I'm going to go ahead and resave again. And I'm going to switch to form view and test this particular one out. So if I choose 165 as my new employee, and our new employee's name is Susan Stone, branch is Granite Bay, and the title is insurance agent. Department, I could use the drop down if I want or type it in, but I'm going to choose health and benefits. Start date is 9/2/2019, and this base monthly salary is $3,800. Okay, so once I type that in, I can choose save employee record. That puts it into the database. If I had a second employee, I could choose add, and then I can close the form. Now what that does is that added Susan in here, and it puts her in here at 165 in order based upon the primary key. There's the information down here that I just typed in related to Susan Stone. But you'll notice that that particular form that we just created is a data entry form now. I can only put information in, record 1 of 1. I'm only going to see my current session, which protects the other data. That's why they do those. So lots of really cool things you can do with forms. This one showed us using some buttons. There's the one with the picture. And again, this is a bound form because it puts information into the underlying table. Now on to reports. So I think you'll see that they're pretty similar in nature in terms of how we work through them. Good luck with your forms.